Midway USA has an extensive selection of bullets, providing top-notch performance and accuracy for the cartridge you plan on reloading. If you plan to hunt, shoot competitively, plink at the range, or even load up some self-defense rounds, Midway USA has the popular brands, calibers, diameters, and grain weights of bullets you are searching for. First-time reloaders, bulk bullet buyers, and seasoned specialty shooters begin their search for bullets at Midway USA. For just about everything for reloading, shop MidwayUSA.com. For almost 50 years, Midway USA has been America's go-to source for just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. Go to MidwayUSA.com to see our latest deals and promotions and take advantage of our super fast same-day shipping. If you need a cooler, a new fishing rod, another rifle, ammo, or a reloading press, you can find it all at MidwayUSA.com. Thanks for your business.
Just be sitting up there jacked with Pepsi.
I'm there for the pack out. You just got to pack me in.
Committed to the bow early on. Like, I love getting close and putting up.
You cover a range of stuff on here too, right? Like,
we call this the THP World Headquarters.
You know, my grandpa Roy Weatherby.
I came into like that golden little pocket where there was like 4 or 5 different bowls. Just
You're Canadian? We're doing a Canadian podcast?
My name's Douglas Bode.
I'm Robbie Denning.
Roy Candy.
They changed the layout.
Oh, okay.
Fuck, it's unorganized here. Unorganized.
Oh dear. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, man?
Oh, pretty good. Tired from this heat, but you know what? I won't complain because it didn't seem like that long ago and the bloody snow was on the ground. So
I know.
I'll take it.
Especially in Saskatchewan, man, we get minus 50 with the windshield. It's ridiculous.
I do not miss my Saskatchewan days at all. Not a single solitary one of them. I love the people I met out there. Fuck that.
Whereabouts were you at?
I live down in Radville, so I worked out of Weyburn on the oil patch.
Oh, yeah.
And then so I was about, I don't know, I guess 50K just southwest a little bit of Weyburn.
Okay.
And yeah, just a beautiful day just gets ruined by wind in the winter time. And the summertime, you're like, where's that wind at?
I know.
Yeah, it's gross.
Every day you get some wind, man. But these last couple of days with that heat, like, it's just been humid and yeah, it's ridiculous.
And you're up near Kindersley, right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Kindersley. I just moved out to Saskatoon about 9 months ago. So.
Oh, nice. Right on.
Yeah.
Just turning my ringer off here, boys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's damn hot, man. It's when I was driving my truck, it said I texted to you, Pete, 44 degrees.
Yeah, that's something else.
Ridiculous.
It's damn hot, man.
Yeah.
Oh. So how's things in Saskatchewan, buddy?
It's good, man. I mean, obviously minus the weather and everything, but it's where all my family's at, and yeah, it's good. Moved out to Saskatoon for my work, and it's going good so far. Sold my house in Kindersley and renting again a condo. So just moved out here for opportunity, more and more connections, and being a full-time mental health advocate. It's good. So work with a couple hockey teams and out in Yorkton and Tisdale. So it's a lot easier for me to get out there.
Yeah, no doubt. I got to turn my phone off here. One thing I noticed, somehow my phone linked to my computer, and now whenever a text message or something comes through, I get this little pop-up, and it drives me nuts.
Oh. Do you have an Apple?
No, I have an Android.
Oh,
I don't do apples.
Not your problem.
Just checking. Is that... Whoa. I'm an Android guy myself too.
The Android boys here. I love
it. So why don't we start? Maybe you just so like here's the thing. We're typically a hunting podcast, and I know like lately we've had a few guests on here that aren't really in the hunting space. But I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we're all guys, right? We're all dudes, and like guys we all struggle with something. You know, it doesn't matter. And, you know, maybe not right now, but at some time in your life, you know, shit wasn't good. You know, there's things that, you know, whether it was depression or, you know, just alcoholism or something like that, right? It's, you know, we've all gone through these things in our life. And so, you know, we set out to do this podcast to help people. You know, we help people in the hunting space and you know, learn some stuff ourselves. I mean, I know for myself, I've learned tons just having the guests on and stuff. But like I said, at the end of the day, you know, we're all guys, we're all dudes, and I wanted to get you on, but just because, you know, this is kind of something that, you know, maybe there are guys out there struggling with this stuff, right? And you know, maybe they don't, maybe they feel alone, or you know, maybe they don't know who to talk to, or you know, like a lot of things too is like guys will just try to, you know, suck it up, you know, bury it. And I mean, I'm guilty of that myself, right?
Yeah,
Like
me as well.
yeah, I don't share my feelings too much. So I mean, that was kind of the reason of getting you on. You know, we've kind of connected on Instagram, and you know, I see what you got going on there. And like Pete and I, we both played, you know, you know, competitive hockey, playing junior, both of us in British Columbia. And I know yourself that's kind of your route. So maybe off the get-go, let's just dive into like your background history and all that stuff.
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me on, guys. I obviously think this is very important, especially with the men's mental health. I was born and raised in Kinnersley, Saskatchewan, a small town of 5,000 people, and I had two older brothers that were big into sports, baseball, hockey, golf, and you name it. So it was a no-brainer for me to pick up that hockey stick. And I was a pretty good hockey player growing up. I kind of had everything given to me at an early age. I was always the top end kid where I was from. And I had to make an important decision at 14 years old to moved to Saskatoon to play midget AAA hockey in Saskatoon, and that's where my mental health kind of went on me. Like you said, with men, we're not too scared to speak up. It wasn't even a thing back in the day, right? It was always get told to smarten up or get over it. And I remember right when I moved out to Saskatoon, so Kinnersley didn't have a AAA program or anything, so I had to move what I call it like the big city, going to Saskatoon. And I remember at a billet, I had to live in a completely stranger's house. And I remember getting out there and I was nervous, man. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell my parents that I didn't want to go because I didn't want I didn't want to wreck my hockey career. I had everyone telling me I was going to the NHL and having all these passions and everything. And I knew I was hockey ready, but mentally, man, I was wrong. Remember getting out there and having to go to a different school, obviously moving in with that new family, depression-like symptoms, anxiety, and I couldn't tell anyone. And I remember getting out there, and obviously you have to try to fit in with the 16, 17-year-old vets on the team. And I was the only kid who had to get billeted on that hockey team. So everyone either lived in Saskatoon or their parents got them a condo and they ended up moving, live with them. And I was the only kid. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And wasn't much of a drinker. I obviously at 14 years old, you shouldn't be, but right when I got to Saskatoon, we had a rookie party, and I'll never forget. We obviously being a rookie, you had to do some things in front of the party, right? I remember they taped or piss warm Colt 45 beers to my hands, and I had to get butt naked in front of the whole party. There was girls around, and I remember that was the first time I got drunk. And that was when my feelings were gone. It kind of disappeared for that moment. My homesickness was gone, and everyone was laughing at me. I felt like I was the life of the party. And then I told them, I remember thinking to myself, is this what I got to do to fit in? And I ended up getting alcohol poisoning that night. And again, didn't tell my parents, didn't tell anything. I had to go to the hospital and get my alcohol pumped out of my stomach. And I remember the next day at practice, everyone came in, oh, DJ, man, you were the life of the party. You were awesome. And I remember sitting there, I'm like, this is what I got to do. You know, this is what I got to do to fit in with the vets. This is what I got to do to fit in with my team. I dealt with bad social anxiety too. And even going to school, even trying to find new friends. Like I wasn't very good at that. And yeah, that's kind of when my drinking started happening at 14 years old. I couldn't deal with my thoughts. So I ended up picking up the bottle and drinking all the time. And I was still one of the top end guys on my team. I was one of those guys where I came to learn quick that I was away from the rink, but when I showed up to the rink, I was a gamer. And yeah, just going there, and obviously got diagnosed with depression, anxiety. I remember took myself in the hospital and asked what was wrong, because I was isolating myself every single night. That whole first year, I did not leave my billet's house. I didn't interact with the team because I was just so homesick. But there's not a chance in hell, guys, I was going to tell my mom and dad. Yeah. You guys know with sports and everything, you guys are former athletes too. Like everything they do for us, all the road trips, the money and everything. The last thing I do is tell my parents. And yeah, I went down a slippery slope from that. 2 years out in Saskatoon, and I remember it was my draft year to the WHL draft. And this is when I started smoking cigarettes. I picked up the bottle every single day at 15 years old and drinking myself to sleep every single night. And I just couldn't talk. Mental health wasn't a thing back in the day. It was fend for yourself. You got to get put in a war zone, and you have to try to be a hockey player and be someone away from the rink trying to fit in. Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't handle that. And then I ended up, so after that first year, I ended up going back home to Kindersley to finish off that school year. And I remember I was obviously a small town kid, so all the kids were looking up to me, and I couldn't handle it. I was bottling everything up. I didn't want to tell anyone I was dealing with depression or anxiety, because I'm a hockey player. I didn't want to let anyone down in my community, right? And started smoking cigarettes, started smoking weed. I was just a lost kid, didn't work out. And I remember I was sitting in math class. I like to share this in my stories. I was sitting in math class, and it was a WHL draft. And I didn't really know anything about the WHL draft besides the Saskatoon Blades and the PA Raiders and all that. And I remember I got an announcement, D Jay McGrath come down to the office. And I remember every single school teacher was giving me a standing ovation that I got drafted 66th overall to the Everett Silvertips. And my first reaction, I was like, where the fuck is Everett? Like, I had no idea where Everett was. And I'm 2 hours away from home, and I'm already homesick. And I remember getting home, my dad giving me the hug, my mom giving me a hug, and I'm sitting there scared shitless. And I remember my dad pulls out the map. We obviously didn't have GPSs back in the day, but pulls out a map, and we look it up, and it's 22 hours from Kindersley. Yeah. Holy fuck. How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
It was one of those things. I ended up going out there, and like I said, it didn't work out, and I was the first forward selected on that team. I know they drafted a goalie first round, a defenseman the second round, and myself. So obviously I had pretty promising spot to make it on the team. And I remember I was so out of shape. We didn't have, in such a small town, we didn't have ice in the summertime. You know, we didn't have personal trainers like these kids do nowadays. And I remember I showed up to camp, and it was terrible, man. It was quite the eye opener. I remember at the end of the camp, usually the general manager likes to talk to you and your dad. And I'll never forget walking in there, and he said, DJ, I just want to talk to your dad. And I remember going out and looking at my mom. I'm like, Mom, maybe I made this team, right? Because this is weird. And my dad didn't tell me until 4 years later, thank God, that the general manager told my dad to stop leaving bags of chips around the house. Your son's never going to play for this organization again. Thank God he didn't. Thank God my dad didn't tell me that right after, because I probably would have hung up my skates just because of what I was going through. And I remember when I went back out to Saskatoon partying all the time. I was hanging out with the wrong crew, and I finally got in shape. I remember I was talking to my buddy, said, DJ, let's just see what you could do. And I remember I lost all this weight, went back out to Everett that year, and ended up making that hockey team. But now I thought my feelings were going to be gone. I thought I was going to be happy again. But that's what depression, anxiety, ADHD, homesick doesn't work that way, right? I didn't have any coping mechanisms. I was too scared to speak up. I thought I could do it on myself. And man, it was a bad 2 years for me out in Everett, isolating again. I was kind of the fifth line, I like to say, in my first year, like in and out of the lineup. At the start of the year, I'd get healthy scratch for one, play one, get healthy scratch for two. And then I remember my coach, he was a pretty hard-nosed coach. I remember one time right before Christmas, I went up to my coach and I was like, what do I got to do to play? I'm so used to playing, so used to being a top-end kid, and I get out there, and I remember he looked at me in the eyes. He said, DJ, do you see your teammate over there? And we were on the ice after practice. And I was like, yeah. He's like, I want you to go hit him. And I'm like, what? he's like, if you want to play, I want you to go hit him. And I said, yes, sir. And I remember, this is one of my good buddies. I beelined it right across the ice and I blew up my teammate. And we ended up fighting that practice. And I didn't miss a game after that incident. And it's just like little things that we had to do back in the day that you don't see anymore. You don't hear that stuff anymore because it's not allowed. And yeah, man, it was a tough spot for me out in Everett. I thought making the WHL, played some pretty good level hockey, I could do it, but didn't turn out that way. And I ended up coming back home. I quit. We kind of parted ways after those 2 years. I remember I called my dad and said, Dad, I just want to have fun playing hockey. Like, I'm done. And we have a pretty good junior A hockey team in Kindersley. And that was my ultimate goal when I was a kid, because I was a stick boy growing up. I was the water boy. We billeted the Clippers for 12 plus years. And it was such a surreal moment going back to Kindersley. And now my homesick is gone. And then I got in a bad knee injury about 30 games into the season and ended up back on the bottle. And I couldn't deal with my thoughts. I couldn't be away from the teammates. I thought it was my fault getting hurt. I just didn't have that communication with anyone because there was no mental health, right? So it was just a downward spiral. And I ended up being the captain my 20-year-old year in Kindersley. And boy, that was one of my worst years of my life. I'm smoking weed every day. I'm drinking every single day, and ultimate low. I remember, and I was so good at painting a picture on my face, right? I didn't want my parents to find out that I was hurting or I couldn't handle it, because that just wasn't a thing back in the day. And after that 20-year-old year, I wanted to hang them up, and I was rock bottom. I just remember I started losing my best friends because I was lying to them. You know what alcohol does to a guy? It turns into someone different. I remember I got a phone call from the Red Deer College Kings, and I had 5 years of free school because of the WHL. And I remember they gave me a call and said, DJ, I want you playing in Red Deer. And now looking back, I said yes because it was an escape route for me. You know, I couldn't be in my hometown anymore after I was hiding from everyone. I didn't want anyone to find out what was actually going on with me because I didn't want to lose my ego, right? Being a hockey player. You know, and ended up going to Red Deer and found myself a first week in a bar every single night in a bar, not worrying about hockey and barely even going to school. I wanted to be the clown. I wanted to be someone that I wasn't, so no one could ever figure out that I have depression or anxiety or anything. So I started drinking. And after that first year, I ended up staying in Red Deer. And I couldn't show my face in Kindersley anymore. And that's when I got introduced to a drug that almost killed me, and that was cocaine. I remember like as yesterday, fellas, guy was in on my hockey team, came over to my condo and pulled out this bag of cocaine. And I remember I was just like, what's cocaine? I'm already basically ruining my hockey career. I'm rock bottom at this time. I have no one to talk to. And when I did my first line, it was started to be an every weekend thing to an every single day thing to a dependent on it. And I had 5 free years of school, and I quit again after year 2. And I remember called my dad crying. I said, Dad, I am done. He doesn't know what's going on, that I'm doing drugs every single day now. I just said, I'm sick of it. I just want to come home. Hockey, it's not my passion anymore. And Dad obviously said, yep. So I remember coming back home, found myself a condo, and remember I was working the oil field. I was selling vehicles, but I was an everyday cocaine user for 10 plus years of my life. Until June 6th, 2022, I had a rope in my room. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, man. 50 some $1,000s in the hole from drug use and drinking and everything. And I just remember looking at this rope. I say this in my stories, and I said I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired until there's something about that night where it's like, DJ, you are going to go tell your mom and dad tonight. And that's how I believe in the higher power, man. I remember I went over to my mom and dad's house, about a 5-minute drive, and I was scared shitless. I remember I turned around twice, but I told myself, if I don't go to my parents' house, I probably wasn't going to live another day. And I had the courage, and I went over to my mom and dad's house that night. And I remember opening up that door, and my mom is my best friend, guys. Like, she does everything for me. My dad's my role model. Like, that guy's my guy, man. And remember opening up that door, and I just looked across the kitchen and see my mom, and I started bawling. And it was like almost like a release cry, right? It was like, Deej, finally, you're going to tell someone, like, since you're 15 years old, and I was 22 at that time, or sorry, 29 at that time. And I was just, this is it. And I remember my dad's footsteps coming up the stairs, and the only words that came to my mouth was, Dad, I am dancing with the devil. Now that night I laid everything on that table from that 15 years old to that present moment. I had told them everything, and my mom gave me the biggest hug after and said she was proud of me. And
Yeah, it's not easy to do.
Oh, it was the hardest thing to do, especially being a man, right? It was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life, but it saved my life.
Yeah. So did your parents, did they feel like, or did you guys talk about it? Do you know if they felt like they maybe pushed you a little too hard, or, looking back on it, I was in the same situation. I mean, I didn't get into alcohol and drugs, but I remember being 15 years old playing junior hockey, and I didn't want to be there, but same scenario, everybody, there was a small town, everybody expected me to do it. My parents expected me to do it. Like you said, my dad, he spent a lot of his time and money, into driving me around and, into the minor hockey system and stuff. And so as a 15-year-old kid, it's really hard to understand like expectations and, or not to understand it, but to understand, to be clear with yourself on like what you want and what other people's expectations are for you. And it's really hard, it's heavy when you're that old, man. It's heavy for sure. And I just wondering, I know my dad did the same thing to my brother. He kind of pushed him a little too hard in the same direction I was going. And there's a lot of resentment still to this day between my dad and my brother. And I know my dad, looking back on it, he kind of he's a little angry at himself. He has some resentments in himself because of the direction he pushed my brother.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, guys, it was the opposite for me. It was more of my peers that were pressuring. My dad was that's why it hurt me even more to let them down, because my dad was always there for me and wanted the best for me. But it was my coaches, it was my peers, my buddies, my hometown that was giving me all the pressure, because I was the only kid my age that went and played hockey somewhere. So I felt like I was letting the town down, and it hurt me even more because my dad, like, yes, he done everything for me. It's just like, why did I do that to him? Right? He was so happy for me. He thought everything was sunshine and rainbows, and it wasn't. And it was quite the eye opener for my parents when I opened them up. Like, and I don't blame my parents, because fuck, their parents didn't know anything about mental health either, right? It was, and I was so good at painting a picture of my face too. I did not let anyone have a sniff of what was going on.
Yeah, you hit it well. And and that's the thing too, when you're young too, you get really good at hiding stuff, and and just kind of being deceitful on like what's really going on, and who you are, and the kind of the direction you're heading. It's funny you say that too, like break the cycle. I know, I've got 3 kids now. I'm 45 years old, and I my parents, when we grew up, it was almost not every night, but a lot of the nights they were drinkers, right? They hung out with people who drank, and that was kind of just the thing. Everybody drank socially. Friday night after work, they'd have drinks at work, you know what I mean? And it was just the thing to do, and their parents did it before them. And I seen the cycle, what was going on as I got older. I realized, like my kids started growing up, and they kind of seen what was going on, with myself and, with, the people I associate with, kind of all doing the same thing, all doing the same following the same lineage that our parents did. And I realized one day, I'm like, man, I got to break this cycle. I got to stop doing it. And I just, I quit drinking altogether. And that was probably the driving force in what led me to quit drinking. And, when I was in my 20s, I obviously partied hard. I drank a lot. I wasn't a huge drinker, but I just didn't want my kids to follow that same cycle, right? Because it's really easy to do. It's, it's really easy to do. You get caught in that trap, and you just don't know how to get out.
Oh, 100%. And you're right. You said it bang on. And I always say, like, men's mental health, you're not going to see guys just like women, right? Say they all go out for supper. Well, they're talking about life situations. And the guys go out, someone's bringing a case of beer, who's going to get the drunkest. And if you talk about your feelings, you're going to get called a pussy, right? It just wasn't a thing. And it's still a lot of work on it, but that's what I do full time, man. I'm an open book, because me being vulnerable, and if I didn't speak up about my feelings or emotions that night, I probably wouldn't be here today. So I talk,
Yeah.
and
yeah, for sure. But it's like this, it's the time, and I had those peers in my life too. And same with Pete. It's, they're everywhere. It's teachers, it's, coaches, it's, your friends' parents. It's like, nobody cares. Suck it up and keep going. Right. And I mean, like, when you're dealing with certain stuff, yeah, I mean, every morning I get out of bed, if, my alarm clock goes off, it's time to train. I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty sore. Yeah, suck it up, get up. Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares about that stuff. But there's a difference. There's a huge difference in all of it, and you have to learn. And I think that's, as you get older, you really understand that. But when you're young and impressionable, those things aren't really that easy, and you really have no one to turn to, and because you're still unsure about yourself, right? Your confidence is a big thing. If you don't have the confidence to tell people to go shove it, then I mean, but what 50-year-old kid does have the confidence to tell a grown man that he's looking up to?
You're trying to figure yourself out still, let alone confide in somebody else.
Yeah, and if it's your peer, if it's your coach or your teacher, how do you do that? You can't. I mean, really, right? Because you need to be, you want to be on that line, or you want to be involved in whatever it is you're doing. It's really tough.
No, exactly. And I remember when I was in Everett too, we had this is what I do now. In Everett, we had a mental health coach, but it's not as good as it is now. But I remember once a month we had to go to a hotel room and talk to this guy, weird enough as it is already, right? And he was like an older gentleman, but he was a doctor, and he was a part of the team. How am I, as a 16, 17-year-old kid, supposed to go and tell him I'm depressed or have anxiety when he could not relate with me? I could not relate with him. He didn't play a lick of hockey. He wasn't an athlete growing up. I was scared he was going to relay that message to the coach, and I was going to get traded. DJ the distraction. DJ can't handle it. That's why I do what I do. That's why I have having life experience has got me 2 years into Travel Canada and share my story, because kids need to hear it from guys who have walked in their shoes.
Yeah.
I am a big believer in that. Everyone asks, DJ, are you a counselor? No, I'm not. I'm not against that. But having life experience, sharing stories, it's so important to share stories, because someone could be struggling on the other end quietly, and they hear your story and they could pick out a little piece of your story that they could relate with. And that's just so important, as more guys speaking up and talking, because it's a game changer.
Yeah. And the thing that people got to realize too, we're not just talking hockey here. We're talking, I mean, all aspects, but like yourself, it's nice to hear somebody who's an athlete in general, because it's the exact same thing is going to be happening in every sport, every single sport going around. It goes around with people who aren't in sports either, but at least somebody even in a different sport can be like, yeah, no, I know exactly what he's talking about right now. I'm going through that myself right now. And I got to say, it is one small bonus about, the social media and the internet and stuff like that. It's easier for, let's say, myself to see you on there talking about it. Back in the day when we played sports, that wasn't a thing. The internet had just come out. There wasn't, unless they were directly associated with you, you didn't have that outreach to other people. It was your circle, and that was all there was, or it was strangers, and you sure weren't opening up to strangers. That's just the way it was.
I wonder how much of that, but social media, it's always a double-edged sword.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because, I believe that there's a lot of mental health issues going on right now because of social media,
Yeah.
and not just
100%.
kids, adults, grown men, grown women,
Yeah.
parents, people, they look on Instagram and they see what other people are doing, right? And it's always a comparison, right? And that's comparison is the thief of joy, right? You should never compare your life to anybody else's, but a lot of that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And people see where other people are at in their life, because it's easy to show a glimpse, because you're not really showing the whole thing, right? You're not showing, you're not showing all the other stuff, all the ugliness or that. You're just letting people see what you want them to see. And like, it could be, it could be a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. You don't really
it's no different than yourself putting on the facade when you're at the bars, when you're, like you're partying up. This is who I am, when it's not. Well, it's no different on social media. And that's why people should not only worry about themselves. You should just compare yourself to yourself. Are you happy with where you're at? If not, okay, what kind of little changes can I make to my life to make myself happy, And it's all small choices. You put the bottle down. Do you start surrounding yourself with people who you'd like to be around, like a person like Kevin, let's say, he's in shape, he's not drinking, if that's kind of where you want to go. Okay, well, maybe those are the kind of people that you want to surround yourself by. Surrounding yourself by, other people who are into, drinking and drugs and stuff like that. You might want to, it's tough. It's easier said than done. But to step away from one circle and try to incorporate yourself into another circle, it's baby steps and it's small choices, but yeah, definitely having a person to talk to, and not feeling ashamed about it, can be the biggest step that you ever make to, that life-changing moment that a lot of us have had at some point. And that could be the big decision right there is,
I think that's important too, Pete, what you said is the ego thing. Cause that's it. It's all ego. We all have ego. I mean, especially as men, and we're all alphas, right? You get a bunch of alphas in the same room. Yeah, it's banging your chest together. Nobody wants to sit there and show weakness, right? So
exactly.
But I mean, it's like you said too, Pete. It's like you got to surround yourself. You got to put people who make you better in your circle, and the people who don't, you got to get them just out of your. They don't belong in your circle. There's no room for them. If they're dragging you down, or they're not allowing you, or they're holding you back into the direction you want to go, you guys got to get rid of them. And now this is a lot easier as an adult, right? Like, I'm 45 years old. I've accomplished lots in my life, but I also went, I struggled with all this stuff when I was younger. And it's a lot easier for me to say at 45 than it was at 15 or even 25 or even, as I got into my 30s, I kind of things started to change. But when you even in your 20s, you're vulnerable, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do.
100%. And
and I don't know about, what you guys, I know obviously more about what Kev's been through than yourself, but, even when you talk about mental health, the older you get, there's a higher chance of probability that suicide's going to be maybe not directly affected to you, whether it's a family member or a close friend, but, the longer you're around, the more chances are that you're going to have those acquaintances and stuff that maybe have had those mental health issues. And unfortunately, they've gone to the other side. And for some of us others that have had very direct association with it, you start to look for those signs in other people. And I myself have been directly affected by it. And I look for that in other men in little signs. Somebody says, hey, bud, you want to, not to bring up alcohol, but, you want to go out for just a drink, I need to chat. I'm there. I'll cancel this appointment. I'll cancel this and that, because that's a huge step for somebody to take. And people need to start looking for that, because it's a real thing that is surrounded by more people than you can ever imagine. I'll guarantee you have people in your life who have some serious mental issues that they're may or may not be burying. But I'll guarantee you, if you know enough people, there's somebody there who's suffering, and they need to know that, they got them. Like, doesn't matter. You just talk, spill what's out there, and we'll go from there. It's a huge thing.
Very huge. And I love how you guys said you gotta find your group, right? I remember early in my sobriety, like, I didn't do rehab or counseling, which I'm not against, but I didn't want my parents to spend X amount and more dollars on me to get better, right? So I remember I took me and my dog to the lake for 3 weeks, and I got clean, thank goodness. And I remember I came back home and I started Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And I just remember I went to Walmart and grabbed some cheap light, and I just went on there and shared my story. And that's kind of what was a game changer for me, because then I got flown out to Ontario to share my story with a couple of AHL teams, and the rest is kind of history. But the biggest thing is when people ask, like, yes, you have to find your crowd. I went on I don't want to say lonely, but it was, I'm not gonna be wrong, but I had to leave a lot of people behind. And then you start picking, you're almost like, why hang out with this guy? Well, all we have in common is drinking. Every time we hang out, one of us is bringing a case of beer, right? And then when I had to do that, I had to leave a lot of hockey guys behind. I had to leave a lot of guys who were in my life that we did that. And I was probably a good 8 months. I was kind of on my own, obviously having my parents as my support system, and how big this sober community is, and how many strangers that are my life saviors, man. How many people who I've met that are in the same rope as me, and how that made me grow. And it's leaving room for the right people. I'm a big believer on that. You're going to find people that are going to walk into your life for that main purpose. And that's why you have to find the right surrounding, because you're right. You're not going to be able to get better by hanging around with your same crew. There is no chance you're going to get around. Like I don't go, like, obviously I don't go to bars anymore. I barely go to weddings anymore, just because I know I can now, but I just had to remove myself away from that, anything that triggered me. And my best quote ever: it's better having 4 quarters than 100 pennies, man. It's good to have that good small circle that make you want to grow, So yes, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And there's actually something I just heard within the last couple of weeks, actually, and I forget who told it to me, but it was the size of your circle will be directly affected to how truthful you are about yourself and what you put out. The more fake you are, the more you're not being honest with yourself, and you're putting on that facade for everybody else, the bigger your circle will be, because you're pretending to be something you're not. The more truthful you are to yourself, the more honest you are, and not caring so much about what other people think about you. This is who I am, like it or leave it, the smaller your circle is. And those people that are in that circle, those are your rocks. That's who you need to hang on to, and bring in other people that are like that. Because the other stuff, I don't know, it's just decoration. It's not for real. It's not going to help you. And you need those people who are going to, if you're being an asshole, you need them to be like, you're an asshole. Like, what's up? You're being an asshole these days. You need those people there. And, those are your close buddies. And you need them.
And you're weeding out the ones that you don't want in your life, right?
Yeah.
You said it 100%, man. I'm an open book now. If I'm not feeling well, I tell that person. I'm very vulnerable now, because that's what saved my life. And I tell these young kids, I speak to young kids about mental health, and speak up and be vulnerable and talk about your problems. Everyone has a book bag full of problems on you. Yeah. And the sad stat is nowadays, guys, 1 of every 5 people are dealing with something mental health related. And it's sad. And then again, it goes back to bottling.
Did you say you said 1 in 5?
1 of every 5 people.
Wow. That's a lot.
That is a lot. And I always say, there's a room full of 50 people. Look around, guys. We just never know.
Yeah. It's true, man. It's funny. Like you talked about, grab a case of beer, go hang with your buddies. It's funny that when you stop drinking, like I have lifelong friends, that I still talk to this day. Don't talk to them as much, but since I quit drinking, we just don't see each other anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, hey, come over for a beer. And it's funny how like that was kind of the glue that held the friendship together. And it's like you take that away and then there's no friendship. And it's like really sad, because I've known those guys for, 30 plus years. And to think that is all that was holding the friendship together is, it's really heartbreaking when you think about it. You look at it, it's like, man, like really? That was really it? That's all it was? Right. And it's funny too. And like when you set a goal for yourself and like you get away from all that other stuff, you set a goal for yourself and you start working towards that goal, those people that are in your life and they're supposed to be your friends and you're close to, they'll actually drag you down.
Yeah. They're gonna actually, jealousy, man.
Yeah. Those are the ones who are going to try to pull you away from your goals. And the more successful you get in terms of reaching your goals, the smaller your circle gets and the less friends you have. And it's, it's funny, and it's true for, you talk to anybody who's had any success in life and they'll say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. I relate big time, man. It's sad, but funny story you said that there. So I have, this goes back when I was playing in Everett, and I had a best friend on that team who we hung out every single day. And obviously with me going through my drug and alcohol problem, I stopped talking to him or whatever for a good 16 years. And 2 months ago, actually, he reached out to me on Facebook. And he's like, Deej, man, I'm seeing what you're doing. That's awesome. He's like, but I got something to tell you. I said, what's up, man? He said, I was going through the exact same thing you were going through. Isn't that crazy? What if one of us would have said something, maybe something would have changed, but you're right, man. You're going to find your real friends when you're bettering yourself, when you're not hanging out with the normal crew anymore. It was the hardest thing other than speaking up, man. The hardest thing was having to leave relationships behind. Felt like you're missing out on everything, right? What are they saying behind my back? What are they saying about you? Like, it took me a while. It took me a good 7, 8 months to not give a shit now what people think about me, because I know I'm doing it for me, and I'm just over 2 years sober now, and I have a strict routine. I have to do that because I know I need to do it for me, right? So, yeah, man, I can relate on a lot of that.
Yeah, and it's funny too, and it's not just your friends. I back to when I quit drinking. It's like, my wife and I, we'd always, every Friday, we'd go out to the backyard, sit at the bar, watch TV, and have a drink. It's kind of our thing. The kids would play in the pool and they do their thing. And, that's just what we did. And then that stopped. Right. And I remember, my wife, I love my wife to death. And obviously she loves me. She only wants what's best for me. But, she's like, really? You're not going to have one drink? You know what I mean? Like, just one? And like, yeah, it was hard for her to understand too. And then, but she cycled back a lot. Like she used to be she never really was a drinker. Her dad was an alcoholic and she kind of grew up with that, and she never really drank. And then COVID happened and she kind of got, into some bad habits as well. Right. But just seeing what I've done, quit drinking altogether, she barely drinks. And the same thing, like her friends that she used to hang out with, she just doesn't associate with them anymore because she knows what it's going to lead. It's going to lead to 4 glasses of wine, just wasting 5 hours doing nothing, not getting anything done, and then just waking up, wasting the whole day. And then unfortunately, it's the kids that end up suffering because of it.
Yeah.
Right. They're the ones you're hungover, and it's not fair to them. They didn't ask you to go out and do that. I mean, we've all done it. I remember being hungover and having to get up with my kid at 5 a.m. and it sucked. But, as they get older, they see what's going on, right? It's like, again, it goes back to breaking that cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it hard? Was it hard for you? Sorry for interrupting there, but was it when you had to leave that certain relationships behind? Obviously, it was probably hard for you, but has any of your buddies talked to you and said, good job or anything to you? Or
no. And the thing is, I didn't really drink a lot, you know what I mean? Like I did when I was younger, but I didn't drink a lot. Mm-hmm. I just it wasn't that I was an alcoholic. I just didn't want my kids, I didn't want them to have any chance of them falling into the same cycle that I did, because I look back on my life and know, I feel really good at the position I am. I've worked really hard in my life, and I've accomplished a lot in my life. Everything I've set out to do in my life, I've accomplished it through. But it's all come through extremely, extremely hard work. Up at 4 a.m. to bed at midnight, right? For years. Not doing this for 5 years, doing it for 25 years. Every day, 7 days a week, and just constantly doing it. And that's the consistency is what's made me successful. But yeah, they haven't said yes. I mean, I still talk to them, obviously, because, we all shared the love for hunting, right? So, as soon as hunting comes around, that's something we share. But again, it's just, the friendship is just different now. It's not like, hey, I'm going to pop by after work, or like, hey, you guys want to come over for a barbecue, or, you know what I mean? You just lost that connection. And it's sad. Like I said, it's sad because the glue was the alcohol that kind of kept it all together.
When you guys were going out together, I know I get this now, and obviously the boys know, like, if say you're going out and they're like, hey, is it okay if I have a beer? I almost like I hate that more. You know what I mean? I hate that more when they ask because like I don't care. Like I don't want you to not have a beer because I'm around, right? Like do you ever experience that?
Well, no, we don't. But the thing is, so I have a friend of mine. He works for me, and he had a serious drug problem, and he fell in and out of addiction. Multiple times he relapsed. He was doing good. He's been clean now, I think, for almost 2 years. So, I'm
Awesome.
really proud of him.
It's awesome.
But that I kind of feel like that when I'm around him. With me, people are mostly like, oh, you don't want a beer, and like, like I said, I wasn't at the point where alcohol was a problem. I just stopped doing it just to stop doing it, right? Because like I said, I want to break the cycle for my kids, and I'm 45 years old, and I work, I have a very physical job, and I like to train a lot, and the alcohol just really wasn't serving any purpose, right? You get the inflammation, and it wasn't doing anything for me, so I cut it out. But I think that if you're in a situation where you hit rock bottom because of the alcohol, I think it's different. I can kind of see why people would go there. And I want to tell a little story because we were talking earlier about the signs. So I had one of my best friends ever. He was a Mason as well, and he ended up working for me, and he worked for me for a long time. And I know that he had a hard time living with his dad. His dad was an army man, right? They moved around lots, and his dad was never around, and he suffered. At the time, I didn't realize he suffered with depression. I know it now just because of the outcome, but he got addicted to, through his friends his whole life, addicted to opium pills, and that led to heroin. We're talking though about a guy who had a house, had 2 kids, had a wife, a dog, had his shit together, but he struggled with this drug addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Terrible thing. And so one night, they were buying a house, and he was just staying in our guest bedroom for a few days, while his wife was out of town. They were moving into a new house. So while he was moving, I was going to help him, and he was just staying in our guest bedroom. One morning I was like, we had a couple drinks, nothing crazy. We went to bed at, I think, like 11 o'clock. And then, I'm doing stuff around all day. I was like, hey, like I'm supposed to be moving. What's going on with this guy? Like, no word from him. Finally, about noon, I go downstairs, and he was dead as a doornail. Just found him dead, and he had died. He had died from overdose. And it's just like I said, it's like something you never you just don't know about it, right? I knew the guy for a long time, and he hid it from me. Like I knew he had problems, and like sometimes he'd drink too much, right? But again, that was kind of the thing, right? And we go back to what we were saying before, it's just you fall into that routine. After Friday on work, everybody lets loose, right? And they suffer a hangover the next day. They waste half the day Saturday. And but yeah, looking back on it now, I definitely see the signs, and I definitely would know how to approach it a little differently. But it's tough at the time. You just don't know. And like, this was quite a while. I mean, when this happened, this was over 10 years ago now when this happened. But at the time, I don't even think, even if I knew, I don't even think I would know how to approach him about it.
Yeah.
How do you say that to somebody that what's going on, and like they have their shit together, and so it's like, well, is it affecting him? And like how much, I could just imagine the stuff that's going on in his head. And knowing we were kind of touched on suicide and stuff, and like I've never known anyone who's ever, committed suicide. So I can't speak to that. But man, you got to be in some dark places, to go that far.
It's, what you do is you straight up, you got to be straight up with it. And you got to be like, especially if it's one of your buddies, dude, you good? Because I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And I mean it. Like,
yeah. And I think
can't
too,
dance around it. You have to be straight up about it, and you have to
repeat
be
it.
And you
not
have
a one
to
and done. And
that's
just
right.
every time let them know, and like, hey man, just so you know, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And that's seriously
And
what it
have a
comes
good
down
ear
to.
and listen. Exactly. Because
You don't have to
all
talk.
I could take is that one time. No, just let him talk. And that's something I wish I would have had when I was rock bottom, guys. I wish someone would be like, Deej, you're okay. Like, what's up, man? I didn't have that, right? And yeah, that's sad story, man, because you're right. You didn't know either what to do or the signs of it and you didn't know. And was he pretty open with his addiction, or was he pretty good at
he hid it from everyone. He hid it from his wife.
Yeah.
He hid it from everyone. Nobody knew, right? And it's like one of those things that, it was just a demon that he had and nobody knew about it. And like I talked to, so at his funeral was here in Kelowna, and then a couple of his friends, because he was in Ontario, and they flew out, and then chatting with them, and they're like, yeah, I mean, that guy, he had it even when he was younger, in his early 20s, he had the demon as well, and he kind of just hit it really well his whole life. And like it really shocked the shit out of me because it was so unexpected. Do you know what I mean? Not the fact that, I love the guy. We spent a lot of time together and he was a huge part of my life, but it's like, man, are you kidding me? Like, how did I not know this coming? And you kind of almost beat yourself up about it a little bit. You're like, man, like I should have known that, I should have seen the signs. And like I said, looking back now, you can kind of see them, but like I said, his wife didn't know. And he was if you looked at the guy and you seen his resume, you know what I mean? He's got, kids, vehicles, boat, trailer, dog, just like a regular guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he just had this demon that just eventually got a hold of him.
You said it earlier, though. You said it earlier about when you're younger, you learn to hide it quick. So if you have demons that young and then you get hooked down a bad road, you get good at hiding it. And it's not always obvious. It can be the most silent little things that you have to pick up on. And if you're not actually looking for it, you're not going to see it. And that's the hardest part. It's not the people who come out and say, I need help. I need somebody to talk to. It's the people like your friend who don't. And it's, if somebody doesn't cue in on it, and you're not always able to, like, I mean, we're not superhuman here. Those are the ones that unfortunately can slip through the cracks, and you do the best you can, but you just,
that's why it's so important so important to be a good human, man. Like you never know what's going on behind closed doors ever. And that's a perfect example, man. And that's why it's so important to share stories too. Like I always say, it's so important because everyone has a story, man. And that's why I do what I do, is to talk and share my story, because it's helping. But when you hear stories like that, man, that's why you gotta be there for another. Pick up that damn phone and make a phone call. You know what I mean? There's always people in your life that you don't really associate with anymore. Well, be the bigger man. Just pick up your phone and ask them how they're doing, because that could be a game changer for them too. Because especially in today's world, man, it's quite the grind out here, right? So
it might only be that one phone call that tells that person. It could literally be that one phone call. Be like, I'm not alone. And that's the switch that kicks on to be like, okay, I need to make a change.
Yeah. Well, and you see, like it's very inspiring to hear your story, because like you hit rock bottom. You know what I mean? Rock bottom. And like for someone who myself, like I've slipped and fell, I've done a lot of things that I wish I didn't do. I don't feel I've ever hit rock bottom. I mean, I've fallen way more than I've way more than I've succeeded, I've fallen, right? But I've always just had this resiliency, and I've always had this belief that all of us are the same, right? We're all born with the same capabilities, right? We all have, 10 fingers, 10 toes. And if you truly want something and you set your mind to it, you can achieve anything you want through hard work, right? Some of us have to work a little harder to get to places, but if you put your head down and you work, you're going to get there. But I've never gone to rock bottom. For yourself, what was that like, picking up the pieces again, and sort of like, it's almost like you have to to me, looking at it, it must be like, what do I do now?
100%. Where's my identity, right? Especially being a former athlete, when it's all done, who am I now? And obviously you're sober now and you got to figure out who you are and you got to deal with your emotions. You got to deal with your past, your feeling sober. That was the hardest thing I had to do. And obviously it's so easy to relive. Like I isolated, I did drugs and alcohol by myself, cried myself to sleep every single night for 10 plus years. Cause I didn't think I could ever get out. I pissed everything away, and admitting it was the hardest thing. Talking to my parents, the hardest thing. And now what's everyone thinking about me? That was another big thing I had to overcome, right? What is everyone thinking about me now? And I didn't know who I was. I never felt my feelings in that long time. And I still battle every single day. Like we're going to get better, but it's never going to get back to good. You know what I mean? I still have depression. I still have anxiety, but I have the tools now. I have this support system now that I do. I get my ass out of bed. Simple. I make my bed every single day because I'm accomplishing something for me. I journal.
Yeah.
I thought journaling was the stupidest thing ever, but journaling saves my life.
Yeah,
it does. And going to the gym, you know what it's like, having that confidence, going to the gym, doing something physical for you. That's the biggest thing I do. I go to the gym every day because that's where I battle with my demons, is at the gym. And I pick up my damn phone every single day. I'll call my mom every single day. I'll call someone in my support system every day, because it's just important knowing that you're not alone. I thought I was alone, you guys, for my whole addiction. I didn't think anyone was going through anything that I was going through until I spoke up. And now how many people are on my side asking, reaching out to me, DJ, how are you doing? I didn't think I had that ever. I thought I was the only former athlete going through this, but boy, was I wrong. Because I deal with 319 athletes right now under my belt, man. I got a program I go through with the guys. It's all the same stuff, man. I'm too scared to speak up. I'm homesick.
Yeah.
I'm going through drugs and alcohol. I'm having a fight with my wife. My wife doesn't like me. It's all the same stuff. Like you said, everyone's born with 10 toes, 10 fingers, man. And it's the biggest thing with men, especially, is talking about our feelings.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to do as a man.
Yeah, for sure. And you think back to like the older generation, like my dad's generation and my granddad's generation, like,
yeah, it was,
you know what I mean? And like, people are just like, no, they didn't have depression. Well, why would it be any different? I mean, obviously life was a lot more simple then, right? I mean, life was a lot simpler, back then.
Yeah.
And I think that your identity was just, what you did, how you worked, right? There was no professional athletes. There was no, there was no movie stars. There was none of that stuff. There was just like, if you were in Saskatchewan, you were a farmer, right? And you went out every day and you did that, and you got married and you had kids, right? And you knew what you were going to do. But now I feel, there's a lot of outside pressure, and it goes back to social media, right? And like, that's, social media, it's always a double-edged sword, where it's good, but it also is bad, right? Because you get these expectations, and as young people, impressionable people, that's where I think you can set these expectations for yourself. And, if you don't have help along the way, it's really easy to fall into a trap and fall in depression when you don't reach your expectations, especially if you don't have a role model, or, somebody guiding you in the right direction, right? I mean, if your dad, if you don't have a dad, or, maybe your dad's just busy at work all the time, or, you're getting peer pressured by whoever, teachers, coaches, right? I mean, that's how it starts. But, I tell my kids, I'm like, you guys can accomplish whatever you want in this life, but you're going to have to work hard for it. I mean, I'll support you, whatever you want to do. I'm behind you 100%. I'm not going to pick you up when you fall down. I'll sit as much as I want to. Like, every time my kids fall, I want to pick them up and help them. But I know, like, nobody picked me up, right? I just kept getting up, right? And, I tell them, when they fall down, make sure you land on your back, because if you look up, you can get up, and just keep getting up, and just keep giving her, right? And don't fall into these traps, right? Don't, if somebody if they're not in your best interest, if they're not helping you get to your goal, then just dismiss them. Get them back to that circle. They don't need to be in your circle, right? If they're not helping you, get them out of that circle, right? Only put people in that circle that's going to help you. And it's tough, though. I mean, we're all young men, right? It's tough. It's really tough. And especially, you want to fit in. You want to be cool, right? I remember going away to playing hockey, and coming back to a small town, and I felt like a rock star, right?
Yeah, rock star, yeah.
Like, yeah, you know, and then the pressure really starts to build, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't want to be there to begin with, but everybody expects it to me, so I got to go. And yeah, and you fall into this thing, you know, I was
could
sad as
relate.
hell being down there, right? It sucked.
Yeah.
You know, luckily for me, I found time out other places, right? I started working out. I got into, lifting weights and stuff. And that's kind of where, I built that. And I kind of always just, I was playing hockey, but I was more interested in lifting weights when I was down there, right? It was just something that kind of got me through it until I got home, right? And then you get home but then you get home until you fall into the trap of like, oh, hey, we're going to a party tonight, right? Everybody wants to hang out with you because you've done something different. You've broken the cycle that, people get into, and not just a small town, but it just seems more present in a small town.
100%. 100%.
So let's talk a little bit about, parents, like I'm a parent, Pete's a parent. What are some things that parents should be looking for in their kids? They've got 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. What are some of the telltale signs that we should be looking for that maybe our kid is suffering with depression?
One big thing's isolation, when they're not being open to you guys and they're sitting in their rooms all the time and kind of isolating themselves. That's one of the big things that these kids do, right? It's hard to go up to your dad, especially and saying I'm sad, right? And so I like talking to parents, because you got to tell them that it's okay to talk about your feelings, and if there's anything bugging you, dads, I'm here for you, buddy. You know what I mean? I'm here for you. Whatever, like you said to you about your kids, like it's so important to let the kid know whatever you're going through. Yeah, it's good. It's good when you're down and you got to get back up. But I have your back, buddy. Yeah. You could tell me anything you want, because it is hard, especially being an athlete, right? I always tell the kids, if you're struggling at your sport or anything, go tell your mom and dad. But half these kids say, DJ, I am scared to talk to my dad. I am scared to talk to my mom, because they're in it more than I am, especially in today's sport. The kids or the parents are put so much pressure on their kids, right? It's ridiculous, man. That's why I lean on parents. I try to tell parents, your kid is not making it to the NHL. They're like, they get fed this at a young age. You just got to tell them that. And it's just like, parents, you just got to relax and enjoy. Let the kid pave his own path. That's the best thing to see.
I think expectations are the worst thing you can do for anyone. And like, as soon as you let go, and I mean, I'm guilty of it. I have put expectations on a lot of people, Putting expectations on yourself is fine, right? It's fine to put expectations on yourself, but you should never put on expectations on anyone other than yourself, because this is where you build resentment, because you put expectations on your son, right? Now, your son doesn't live up to your expectations that you put on him. Those might not be his goals, right?
Exactly.
You're never, ever going to work as hard for somebody else's goals as you will for yourselves. So you put these expectations on, you almost put them on a pedestal, and then they don't reach your expectations, and then you feel like you've been let down.
Yep.
You should take those expectations you're putting on other people and just change them into appreciation. Appreciate the fact that your son or your daughter, your brother, whoever is doing something that they love to do, right? I look at my kids with archery. I'm so proud of them, not because of what they've accomplished, because they're doing something they love to do. And like, it's great. Yes. I mean, I know a lot about it, and we get to do it together, which is part of the reason I think they felt they liked doing it to begin with, because it was something that we all shared, but now they just love it. Right. And I have no expectations for my kids. I just have appreciation. I'm so appreciated that I get to go outside and shoot my bow with them. Right. I'm so appreciated that right now I'm still beating them in the score at the 3D tournaments, which probably won't be for very much longer.
No. But you can actually see that, me getting to witness it from a distance. Like, I live 5.5 hours away from Kevin and stuff. So, a couple times a year we get together, whatever. I get to see the passion in the kids and how much they will like to shoot it. It's different, because as an athlete, you get to see that with other people. And I stress to a lot of parents, being like, that kid is only going to last another couple more years because that parent is batshit crazy, and they're going to ruin the joy of the sport for the kid.
Oh man.
Where if you would have left that kid alone, it would have been crazy to see where they could have gone. Just be there for them, like what Kevin's saying. Help them out along the way, but don't have an end game for them when it might not be their end game, because you can see the difference in the love of the game with a kid when it's them.
Exactly.
Like it's night and day when you were looking for it and you're open about it. You can, as a stranger, you can see it in the way that a parent interacts with their child in any activity, whether it's them, whether it's whatever, versus a person that's letting them float through and helping them along. It's a big difference.
Well, and the most valuable lessons that we'll ever learn in life, and like this, all the hunters listening to this podcast right now can appreciate this. The most valuable lessons you learn in life are the hardest ones.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
It's the hardest ones you've ever, the hardest things you've ever gone through are the most valuable lessons. Now, whether that's good or bad has all comes down to perception of it, right? A lot of things that at the time seem like they were really bad, and then you think it's the end of the world, it's the worst thing ever, but later on you realize, like, oh man, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And it seems like it's more like that with the hard lessons, where something goes by. Let's talk about elk hunting for, like, I remember every missed stalk I've ever done, or every missed opportunity I've ever had in an elk, right? But when it all comes together and the stars align and you arrow one, it kind of just evaporates and you forget all about that, right? Yeah, it's gone. It's gone. But you remember the hard lessons. Yeah. You remember the hard ones, and those are the most valuable.
Those are all
and that's why I say about my drug and my route and everything. Like, I'm almost thankful I went through that, because I wouldn't be who or where I am today. Like, our feelings and emotions, it sucks when it's temporary, right? When you're in it, it sucks. But when you're out of it, it's crazy. Like, I've learned so much about myself. I get to do what I do from my past, right? So yeah, exactly. You are 100% on that one.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's all about perception, right? It's all how you perceive it. Like, all those hard lessons that you went through in your life led up to where you have become now. And like I said earlier, I've done a lot of things that I wish I never did. But if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be the man I am today, right?
Exactly.
I wouldn't have the view on life I have today if I did those things, and if I didn't go through the hard stuff I did when I did. It's kind of just something you have to go through, and that's why I want my kids to experience all that stuff as well, right? As much as I love to help them and pick them up, but yeah, you got to be there for them too. And it's important. I try to make sure I tell my kids, as much as I you want your kids to be like, you look at your kids, like I look at Wyatt, he's going through growth spurt. He wanted to be, macho and like just be, man up, right? But at the same time, you're like, no, that's not healthy, right? That's what my dad did to me, and that's what his dad did to him, right? It's just not healthy. You got to break that cycle. It's the same, evolution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, buddy, I guess we'll wrap it up. Appreciate your time. I appreciate, it was a great chat. It's really great to, it's important to talk about this stuff, because like I said at the beginning, this is, we set out this podcast to help people. We help them with their hunting, and also for us to learn a lot. But again, we're all men, we're all dudes, we're all women, we struggle with these things. This is a real issue, right? And again, if you're struggling with something at home, you're not going to be the best hunter in the bush. It's just the way it is, right? Your head's got to be on the game. And I mean, like, it's like anything, right? It's like hockey, anything you do in life, you want to be at the top of your game when it's time to do it.
Yeah,
exactly. And I appreciate it, fellas. It's important, and having two guys like you, men, talking about, I could sit here and talk all night with you guys, because you guys get it. And it's just important to have men talk about feelings, talk about emotions. And I respect you guys, and thank you so much for having me on. It was awesome. So
thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's an important road that somebody has to do, and I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah, appreciate that, guys.
And just talk. And if anybody out there is struggling with anything, hey man, reach out to myself. I'll put DJ's stuff on the show notes for this. Reach out to Pete, man. Like,
we got
hey
you,
man, we get it. If if you're struggling with anything, you need help with anything, right? I mean, Pete, he needs a little help with the score he put up at the 3D archery shoot last weekend.
Yeah.
You thought I wasn't going to bring it up.
Well, I was going to leave it. I was going to
That's a
bring it
true
up
brother
next
right
one.
there.
I'll end the show off here, guys, with I got to tip my hat off. I got to eat crow for the next year. I had to hand over the crown to Mr. Toy, who shot a fantastic couple rounds. We'll say he threw a stick at me at one point while I was at full draw, but you got to take it, right? That's part of the game.
Hey, buddy, that even if you 11 that mule deer, it wouldn't have done you any good.
No, you still had me by enough points. No, it was a great weekend.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, you guys did it.
Crow.
You guys did a great job again. My hat's off to you, and thanks everyone else that was involved with that. Everyone at the gun club there. So, okay, guys,
Thank you.
It was a blast. We'll talk to you later.
Great chat.
See you guys.
Oh, actually, before we go, DJ, where can everybody find and follow you and hit you up? Like I said, I'll put all this stuff in the show notes, but for the guys driving in their truck, just so they know.
Yeah, Instagram and TikTok and Facebook is all DJ McGrath Hockey. So DJAY McGrath Hockey. You could catch me on there. So
cool, buddy. Okay,
awesome.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you very much.
Right on, guys. See you later.
Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
Gear up for the hunt and learn from the best with Deer and Deer Hunting Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV. Tune in every week for expert hunting tips and unforgettable moments in the field. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment.